All right. Well, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Matthew Flegal. I am with the Sanofi Aventis Corporation. I am a manager in the Animal Models Group. I work within the Comparative Medicine group that is part of the DSAR Boston Hub. And I'm here today to talk about a subject that is very dear to my heart, which is the technician. Let me start off by saying I'm very grateful for the opportunity, both from LabRoots for giving me this platform to talk about this, but also all of you to come and listen to me for the next hour, and hopefully it will prove useful. So one piece of housekeeping before I begin. You do have a green Q&A button, so please feel free to type in any questions that you may have. I'm probably going to hold off until the very end to start addressing them, but please feel free to send them out, and when I'm done with the talk itself, I'll go over questions. So, today I am going to talk about the technician, and the title of my presentation, Reinforcing the Backbone, is titled that way because I do personally believe that the technician is indeed the backbone of lab animal research. So let's go over what is, for the purposes of today's presentation, a technician. Technician is a person who is responsible for the in vivo techniques as a primary component of their job. Put it a little differently, technician is the person who spends the majority of their time in the animal rooms interacting with our lab animals. They perform the experiments, they care for the animals, and they're not only essential, they are truly needed each and every day for proper study conduct to occur and also for the animals to be properly cared for. Today, up in Massachusetts, we have a perfect example of why this is so essential, because outside it's still snowing. We have approximately 8 to 10 inches. And this morning, all throughout Massachusetts and New Jersey and New York and all over the place, there were technicians who were up this morning, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock a.m., to clear out their driveways, to drive in the snow, to get in, to run our studies, and to take care of our animals. It's what they do. And they're essential because they don't show up during the day. The study doesn't happen. We miss time points. We miss dosings. If you're halfway through a 2-year study and the animals don't get dosed, you've wasted an awful lot of time, and your results are probably going to be compromised. And it's the technician who's going to take care of that. So let's talk about being a technician. The good. The best part about being a technician is you get to spend the majority of your day interacting with and handling animals. You get to work with animals, and that's a tremendous gift. It's probably, for most technicians, why they are technicians. They become subject matter experts of all of their in vivo techniques. So be it surgery, be it dosing, be it handling, be it experimental data recording, be it radiotelemetry, whatever. That's what they do. And it's a wonderful way to get exposed to so many different techniques and experiences. They get to organize and coordinate complex study activities. Again, they get to use their brain. They get to put studies together, they get to solve problems, and they get to do it on the fly using their experience and their training. They get to work independently at times. They also get to work on teams, and so they have to build the ability to work on a team, to function as a leader, to function as a follower, and to be able to shift to those roles at a minute's notice. And again, they get exposed to a wide variety of methodologies. Dosing, infusion, radiotelemetry, surgery, ultrasound, imaging, sampling, behavioral assessments. There are so many things that a technician can do that it gives them that ability to experience a wide variety of things. They don't tend to be pigeonholed in. I can say this incidentally because on the previous slide, you might have noticed that there was a somewhat grumpy looking person in surgical garb. 20 years ago, that's a picture of me. And for reference, that was taken at approximately 7:30 in the evening on a Thursday after we had spent the entire day cannulating rats for an infusion study, hence the grumpiness. But again, the opportunities that that's given have been tremendous. Also good. Again, not just the variety of techniques, not just that you can learn so many varied things, not even that you get to work with animals. You can become a skilled generalist as a technician. You can try different things. You can find areas that are of interest to you, that you're passionate about, and with some care, you can actually steer your career in the direction of doing those passions, doing those interests. It also gives you the ability to be mobile, to be more marketable. Your techniques, your skill set can be applied in so many different areas, so many different jobs. And what I've found truly rewarding about it is it allows you to refocus your career. So if you find something that is now of interest to you that you didn't even know existed, you can refocus, you can pursue that interest. And that's a tremendous, tremendous advantage. Okay, but it's not all good. You're not always valued for your individual contributions. You can be invisible. Certainly the senior decision makers, they might not even know you exist, and they certainly might not be aware of how much you as a technician add to how the studies are done. You're often not a decision maker. You're given direction either by a study director or a manager or what have you. Mobility is challenging, all right? It's very difficult for you to move geographically unless you're willing to take some very, very big risks. Typically, technicians are recruited out of a very local pool, and if you're 2,000 miles away from your dream job, you're going to have to be pretty creative to make it out there and even have a shot at getting it. If you want to advance, the criteria may be unclear. It may even be arbitrary, completely at the whim of who you report to or what the structure is or how your job description is set up. And often, you may be managed by people who have very advanced degrees, but they don't have training in how to be a manager. They don't have training in how to develop people. And they may try hard, they may not, but even if they're trying hard, they may not have the experience or the knowledge themselves to do that effectively. So what's that mean? What it means is, as a technician, you have to be responsible for your own career, your own advancement. Now, that's not unique to technicians. Every job has that aspect to it. But technicians need to be aware that they do indeed have that aspect. Yes, you get the gift of working with animals, but you're going to have to pursue your work to a very high standard. You're going to have to pursue your own education. You're going to have to look for your own opportunities. You're going to have to create your own networks. You're going to have to be flexible. You're going to have to be willing to change departments, locations, even companies. You're going to have to differentiate yourself from your fellow technicians, your peers, to be able to move ahead. But again, yes, it's daunting. It's daunting for me. It's still daunting for me. It's daunting for the technicians who report to me. But it gives you, again, that opening to learn the different skills and the disciplines. And those are what's going to help you with your career and advancement. So before we get started, I'm going to try a poll, if you don't mind. So first one, who now is currently a technician? Okay, an awful lot of you. And incidentally, thank you for participating. All right. If not, who was once a technician? Maybe they're not now, but they have been. That's how they started. That's how they got into this field. All right. And lastly, if you're not, you have technicians reporting to you. Are you a manager? Are you a scientist? Are you even a research associate? Technicians report to you, and they're somewhat dependent upon you to help them advance. Wonderful. So at the end of this, we're going to talk about that a bit. All right. So prerequisites to advancement. If you're a technician, in my opinion, these are the things that you have to have. You don't have these, everything else that we're going to talk about is probably not going to be very helpful. These are your prerequisites. You've got to have a solid grasp of your techniques. Whatever you're doing, be good at it. If you're good at it, try and be better at it. You have to have a very high personal standard of quality. If you're not doing your work effectively, efficiently, and to a high standard, that gets around. You may or may not have experienced this if you're a technician, but believe me, as a hiring manager, and when you talk with recruiters, your reputation precedes you. You would be very surprised how easily your personal qualities when you work transfer around the community, both good and bad. You're going to have to be able to work on a team. Yes, there are positions where as a technician you can work completely independently, but even then, you're usually working in collaboration with someone else who's designing a study, putting parameters into place, whatever. You're going to have to be able to work on a team, and you're going to have to be able to work effectively on a team. Maybe leading it, maybe leading from a lower position, which is difficult in and of itself, but you're going to have to be able to function on a team. You've got to be able to learn new skills and concepts. You always have to be learning. 20 years I've been in this field, the industry has changed massively. If you don't adapt to that, if you don't learn the new things, it will hold you back. And you're going to have a strong work ethic, especially at a technician level, going back to how your personal qualities are going to be more widely known than you might expect within the community. You've got to have a strong work ethic. You have to be willing to take on new challenges. You have to put yourself out there a bit. But if you've got all of these, you've got the core, you've got the building blocks that you're going to need to move forward. So let's try a case study. Case study number 1. Back in 1984, this individual started volunteering at vet clinics. Seemed like a good idea. They liked working with animals. Possibly might want to become a veterinarian when they grow up. 1988, they began an undergraduate course in pre-veterinary medicine. 92, the research bug bit this individual. He started working with electron microscopy. Spent a lot of time, from what I've been told, sitting in a very dark room. But got involved with research and found it exciting and decided that that's what they wanted to pursue with their life. So 93, they got a job at a contract lab, working with rodents, rabbits, non-human primates, dogs, and pigs. And they were exposed to opportunities. Did they want to support the new head surgeon? He said yes. Head surgeon said he needed people to do basic surgery. Was he interested? He said yes. The infusion group needed people to run studies. He said yes. New radiotelemetry software came in with a manual. No one had used it. No one had tried it before. Someone needed to learn it, so he took the manual home, spent a long weekend reading it, came in and played, and became the radiotelemetry expert. Took a lot of extra time, but he put it in. Working in surgery, 12, 14-hour days, he did it. And eventually a former colleague that he had worked with, who was now a hiring manager at another company, asked if he wanted to come off and become a research associate. Sounded like a pretty good idea, so he did. And he started taking certification exams. In 97, he was poached by another former colleague to come out to a different company, in this case a major pharmaceutical. He was asked if he wanted to train surgeons. He had the experience. He was somewhat nervous and anxious, but he said sure. He needed to decide if he wanted to be a study director. He said sure. Asked if he wanted to become a board member for one of the national organizations. He said sure. And so on and so on and so on. What happened was, when a new technique or capability came along, he took it. He said yes. He put in the extra work and the extra effort. He got his next job, the one that started him, to be able to stretch further and eventually become a study director himself, because he had done good work for a former colleague, and that former colleague remembered him, networking. But to advance, he had to move to another company. He had to be willing to pack everything he had, admittedly at that time, not a whole lot, move to a completely different place and take a chance at a new company that he'd never been exposed to. As I'm sure pretty much all of you have figured out, yep, that was me. And while I don't want to denigrate the effort that I put into it, it didn't happen because of me. It certainly didn't happen solely because of me. It happened because there were people who helped me. I call them mentors. I'm going to talk about them. So what is a mentor? Well, it's not a trainer, all right? A trainer is someone who is tasked to take you and give you a new skill, be it a new technique, a new discipline, what have you. A mentor is the person who tries to find opportunities for you. Some of you may be a mentor for technicians. Some of you in the future may also be mentors for technicians. This is what you do. You find ways to help them grow. You put opportunities in front of them. You give them guidance. Now, a lot of mentoring is helping you get the technical skills. Had I not had my very first mentor, Dr. Mendenhall, who's a veterinarian, he took me and taught me surgery, and that opened up my whole career for me. But more important, in my opinion, are the soft skills. How do you communicate? How do you write effectively? How do you present? How do you interview? How do you lead? How do you follow? How do you organize? Those are critical. Those are the things that you as a technician are going to have to seek out. As you can tell from the slide, by the way, yes, I am indeed a nerd. But they're good examples in different ways. So is a mentor essential? No. But yeah, kind of. It is possible, and I have known technicians who have been able to acquire these skills on their own. Very few of them. It is very difficult. I'm tremendously impressed with the ones I know who have been able to do that. I didn't have to do that. I don't know if I would have been able to. So for me, at least, mentors were essential. They got me to where I needed to be. Role models are useful. A mentor can certainly be a role model. Your mentor is also, however, in a lot of cases, going to be your first piece of effective networking. They are the people who are going to open these things up for you. To the very least, they are tremendously valuable. Okay? So how do you find a mentor? The easiest is right place, right time. Where you're at, there's someone who needs assistance, who is looking for someone to help them out, who is looking for someone to take on a difficult or challenging or time-intensive or frustrating job. They take an interest in you. Most of my mentors, that has been the case. I've been very fortunate, be it Dr. Mendenhall, be it Drs. Kuhlman, be it my previous boss, Dr. Sarah Savage. These are the people who I came into the right place, and they helped me. They gave me the tools that I needed to move forward. And I'd like to emphasize, it's not just PhDs, it's not just DVMs or MDs. Technicians are mentors. If it hadn't have been for a trio of technicians, Lisa and Kim and Michelle, when I started, who gave me the tools I needed, I never would have been as effective. So mentors are all over the place. They're people who take an interest and guide you. You can seek them out. And I've done that in cases too. And I've known people that was how they had to find a mentor. They had to seek them out internally. What did they want to do? Who was involved in doing it? And they approached them and said, how can I be of use? Or said, I'm tremendously interested in what you do. Can I talk to you about it? It does work. And you can certainly seek those out externally. You can use schools. You can use industry organizations to find mentors. I'm part of the New England branch of ALAS, and we have technicians on our board, and they get exposed to new people, and they get exposed to mentors who will help them. And we're going to talk about using organizations a little bit later in our presentation because they are a tremendously valuable resource. both for networking, but also to find those mentors. So if you're trying to find a mentor, the briefest way I can put it is mentors typically take on what I call low-hanging fruit. You need to be an obvious choice. They need to know who you are. They must also be impressed with you. You have to have shown them that you're going to be valuable. They can utilize you. They must be able to functionally interact. I've seen it. And it's not helpful to identify a mentor who is in a different country or is organizationally not able to, or in some cases not even allowed, to interact with you. They can't be a mentor if they can't actually mentor you. So you're going to need to position yourself as a technician to be the obvious choice. So mentors may be slightly altruistic, that's true, but generally the relationship needs to be a win-win. You're going to get mentoring, they're going to get something from you. You're going to provide high-quality work on their behalf. You're going to take on lower-level responsibilities to free them up to focus on things that are more important to them. You assist them in expanding their capabilities or their output and make them look good. You provide them with positive PR by, again, you assist them. Maybe you help them avoid errors. Maybe you catch mistakes before they become problems. You provide skills that complement theirs. We do that all the time with my technicians. They have outstanding surgical skills. There are investigators who need those skills. It's a wonderful collaboration and tremendously useful for all the parties. The best way I can put it is, to obtain a mentor, you're going to have to make sure that you're not the only one getting something from that relationship. You also need to be self-aware. You can get taken advantage of, and you're going to have to be aware, and you learn that through experience. Or you learn that through other mentors pointing it out. But you're also going to have to take guidance when it seems unpleasant. Using myself as an example, going back to some of my mentors, especially Dr. Coleman and Dr. Savage, the amount of time that they spent trying to beat decent technical writing for reports and papers into my head probably seemed frustrating beyond belief for them at times. But without that, I wouldn't have been able to write papers, to write articles, to write patent applications. They took an interest, and it was essential. So again, did I want to do it? Nope. Did I necessarily want to be told where I was having difficulties? In some cases where I was outright failing? Absolutely not. But you have to do it. So a mentor is useful, but it's not enough. Yes, it's guidance, but you're going to have to be recognized. People are going to have to know who you are. You're going to have to take their guidance and follow it. You're going to have the self-awareness to choose the directions that work best for you. Mentors are not you. They can be outright wrong. They can draw on their own experiences to provide guidance that aren't applicable to you or aren't useful to you or are so completely different than the way you are, they're just not going to work. So you're going to need some other things. So let's talk about another technician. Started out working at an airport, shift manager, and became interested in research and decided that's what they wanted to do. And so they took an entry-level job to get their foot in the door, animal care technician. And if you want to talk backbones, that's the backbone to the backbone, if you will. And what this technician did is she focused on areas of interest that were beyond the scope of her job description. She kept doing her job, and she did it extraordinarily well, but she found other avenues to contribute. In this case, she was looking for ways to make sure that the animals were cared for better post-operatively. What could we do without analgesics that would increase the comfort of our animals? Heat, dietary supplements, bedding, testing it, trying it out, identifying new ones, getting them in. Someone needed to do inventory, and she took it on. I hired her as a surgical technician. And since then, she's presented at national meetings, she's taught wet labs, she's done brain and heart surgery. She's an outstanding technician, a great surgeon. she found ways to contribute and she got noticed, and it worked. And she found ways to make what we do better. And those are people that move forward because they're valuable, and you want those people on your team. So knowledge-based. Unfortunately, and I'll use myself as an example yet again, most technicians, when you start out, don't really have the scientific background to advance much beyond technical work, and you're probably not going to get exposed to it. Technical skills, scientific principles, study design, regulations, leadership, etc., etc. There are going to be gaps. And if you're managing technicians, recognize these gaps. And if you want to develop them, find ways as part of their development plan to give them those tools. So yes, technicians have training programs generally, but those aren't going to fill in most of the gaps. Yes, they're going to focus on technical skills, lots of emphasis. Technicians do technical work, so you're going to focus on that. Scientific principles, depending on the job, probably relatively moderate, probably also limited and focused to the areas that are going to be of most use to them. Study design, probably pretty minimal. Regulations, very heavy emphasis on things around the animal work, probably not much emphasis at all on the areas that are outside of what their job description is. Leadership, probably variable, and I would venture to say that in most organizations, leadership is learned on an ad hoc basis. There's not formalized training, it's not part of the development plan. Maybe they get put in a position where lead this team, and hopefully they figure it out along the way. Again, organization, variable, data analysis, probably quite minimal. Scientific technologies, depends on their job. If it's appropriate to their job, they'll get it. If it's not something that they're expected to do, probably won't be exposed to it. So you as a technician have to fill those blanks in. You as a manager of technicians have to help them fill those blanks in. So formal schooling, that's a great way to do it. If you have an advanced degree, yes, it's going to help you tremendously. It's going to fill in your scientific gaps. It's going to help you with upward mobility. And I will tell you, your degree does matter. Unfortunate in some cases, but very true. The larger the company, typically, at least in my experience, the more important a higher degree is. An associate's degree is helpful. It's a good foot in the door degree. But a bachelor's, in a lot of cases, even for a senior technician, certainly for a research associate, for a junior scientist, it's essential. Yes, you may develop enough of a skill set to be able to skip this step. Those people are pretty few and far between. A master's degree, somewhat variable importance. Some companies value them very highly. Others lump them in with bachelors. My experience has been the smaller the company, the more value is given to a master's degree. For senior science, investigator, senior management positions, a PhD, being a physician, being a veterinarian, is almost essential. Yes, it's not completely insurmountable, but it's pretty close. But let's be honest, it is daunting, especially if you've entered the job market. You go back to school, you stop working, you give up your income. And in some cases, maybe that's the best choice for you. And if you've got a good mentor, that's the person to talk to about it. But you can always take classes. And a lot of companies offer either full or partial subsidizing of those. If that's the case, take advantage of them. I will tell you again, as a hiring manager, those matter. And I will also tell you that as a hiring manager, if you're interviewing, you're so much better off saying, these are the classes I am taking, or these are when I'm taking the classes, than, yep, I've thought about taking a class, or I'm looking at a college. Have something concrete to show, which you can learn without formalized courses. And that's what most of us as technicians have to do. You self-educate. The information is out there. It's in books. It's in journal articles. It's all over the place. And for those of us today, the advantage is tremendous. I remember which I suppose is dating myself, back when if I wanted to investigate a new technique or get to a journal article, I drove into Boston, I went to one of the med school libraries, and I spent 3 or 4 hours chasing down references, hoping that they were still there, that the appropriate pages hadn't been torn out, that I could even find it in the first place, and that the article was of any use. Today, with the internet, the information is all over the place. It is so much easier to get to, and that is something as a technician you should be taking advantage of. If it's a book, the books are expensive. I have a pretty wide library that I've kind of grown over the last 20 years. It's costing me a lot of money. It's been worth it. But if you have a local library, interlibrary loan can get you almost any book you want. And in general, it's free or it costs $1. So you can get those resources, and you should. It helps if a mentor can identify what resources are available, but you can find them yourself to a large degree, especially if you look around a bit. Yes, you may have questions, or some areas of it might be more complex than you're ready for. I still have that happen. So you find people, you talk with your mentors, and you might even develop new mentors or new people in your network because of it. Training. Go to local ALAS meetings, go to workshops, go to local veterinary technician meetings, go to national meetings. Admittedly, harder in this era of trimmed travel budgets and what have you, but still, they come to your area, go. Veterinary Bioscience Institute offers webinars, and they offer workshops. A lot of organizations, small ones, are starting to do that, especially in the vet tech field. Charles River has short courses. LinkedIn has groups that you can participate in. The ALAS CompMed, and there are some other listservs, online programs. There are a lot of avenues out there that, again, weren't there 10 to 20 years ago, but they're there now. And those can fill in gaps that will help you tremendously. So take advantage of them. Another case study. This individual joined as a contract worker, technician, expressed interest in surgery, and started probably to see a theme here, not just the surgery, because that's what a lot of my background is, but also they expressed an interest. They wanted to learn. They went to the people and said, "Can you teach me more about this?" She studied textbooks on her own. She studied internal training modules on her own. If she didn't have the time given to her, she made the time, and she went to the resources and taught herself. She constantly pestered people to answer the technical and scientific questions that she needed. She got hired as a study technician. Continuing that same behavior, there was assistance needed with scheduling, so she taught herself. She experimented. She put the time and effort in above and beyond what was expected of her. Well, now she schedules. She schedules our entire group. She works with investigators, not just in how to get their studies in, but how to design their studies. She reports to senior management on study progress and metrics and what have you. Again, she wanted to learn, and she went through the effort of teaching herself when she had to, and she tracked the people down to get the information that she needed. She focused on quality, and it paid off. So I mentioned soft skills way back at the beginning. Communication skills. How do you write? How do you speak? How do you communicate information, and how do you receive information? How do you solve conflicts? Do you avoid them? Are you proactive? Do you take charge of them? These are things that will help you break out. You communicate on studies. You analyze data. Yes, it's not typically a major part of a technician's job, but I can tell you that speaking to someone who does data analysis, the people who do it are always behind. There's always more analysis than there is time, and people who express interest, it's worth it to train them. Method and model development. How do you solve problems? How do you present? We'll talk about that in just a little bit as well. These skills require practice. They require training. And unfortunately for a lot of technicians, because it's frightening, because they're apprehensive, They don't try it. And that holds you back. It will hold you back tremendously. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit as well. And also, these may not be core parts of your job as a technician. And so management may not support it. So going back to the previous case study, maybe there isn't time within your workday to do it. So you make the time, you use your own time. It does get recognized, it does pay off. Yes, again, a mentor is so useful when it comes to this. Another real world example. So presentation skills are typically terrifying to a technician. When I did my first presentation back in probably 98 or 99, I was petrified. My boss at the time didn't really, it's not that he didn't care, but he didn't let it stop me. It was something that he considered essential to my development. So I was going to do it. And he gave me the time, and he gave me the training to be able to do it effectively. It's what I try and do now. So a couple years ago, 2 of my senior technicians were outstanding technicians, but had never done any presenting outside small ones within their own group or within comparative medicine. They submitted abstracts and they got accepted, in this case, the Academy of Surgical Research. So we spent a lot of time, several training sessions on how to put together a good PowerPoint presentation. More training sessions on how to deliver a good quality presentation, how to speak clearly, how to rehearse, how to try and not seem too petrified while standing up front. We did multiple sessions, dry runs, different audience groups, providing lots of feedback, revising their talking points and their delivery. They did phenomenally. They really did. And the end result was, besides the fact that their angst level was dramatically raised for a couple of months, the talks were very well received. They got a lot of questions from the audience. They got a lot of questions after the presentations. We've had ALAC inspectors come in and tell them that they have to publish this data because it is so useful. They went through the effort of getting the data themselves. Now they're known. And that is so tremendously useful for technicians because people outside of our company know their names, know that they have a piece of knowledge that other groups might want to have. And also, we got the information out. They were doing interesting things, and now a whole bunch of people know about it. So our industry is improved, and the information is more available. One piece that I did want to touch on about soft skills is we make jokes, or at least I make jokes, about the various corporate buzzwords and what have you. As painful as it is for me to admit it, they're actually useful. They didn't just develop in a vacuum. They're a good way to express concepts. They may sound silly, they may be annoying when you hear them all the time, but they're useful. And as a higher level technician who's expected to lead others, you're probably going to need to know them. And certainly when you're interacting with senior management or senior scientists, they're going to use them. So at a bare minimum, you need to have a familiarity with them. You need to be able to use them effectively. And again, as much as it pains me to admit it, they're useful and they will help you as a leader, but only if you try and use them. So let's talk about getting noticed a little bit. Networking, professional demeanor, effective resume writing and interviewing, and supporting and impacting the industry. You as a technician need to get noticed outside of your company. You as a manager of technicians need to help them accomplish that. Network is absolutely essential, and it's usually neglected by technicians. I did, certainly, and it held me back at times, and I've seen it hold back other technicians. Just doing a good job is not enough. Going way back to the beginning of this presentation, senior management might never know who you are. They might never understand your contributions. And if your own senior management doesn't, it's a pretty safe bet that senior management at other companies definitely won't. So you've got to find a way to develop a network. So go to meetings, talk to people, ask questions of the speakers. When I present, the people who ask me good questions, I remember them. I jot their names down. They are people who are worth keeping track of. Get involved. Again, I can tell you, I've been on the board of the Academy of Surgical Research. I'm on the board now for the New England branch of ALAS. There's never enough help in any of these organizations. National ALAS as well. If you're willing to help and you're willing to work, they will use you. And you will get noticed and you will have opportunities to make a mark in the field. Be a source of information. Just because you're a technician, don't be afraid to throw out information that you have. CompMed, LinkedIn, formal presentations, whatever. One of the things that tends to hold technicians back is they don't realize how rare their information is because it's just part of their job. You can present, you can write articles, you can do posters. Let me give you an example of how essential networking is. In the past 7 years, I've hired about 10 technicians. Only 2 were unknown quantities. Either I knew them or a colleague that I trusted and respected knew them and recommended them. So play your odds. The more people you know, the more chance you have of moving both laterally to a different company or a different department, but also forward. And to be honest, doing things like presenting and writing articles and posters, that looks great on a resume. And those things will get you through filters on large companies. So when you submit your electronic resume and you're wondering how you get noticed, having citations will get you noticed. If you want to be taken as a professional, you're going to have to be professional. And I cannot emphasize this enough. It sounds basic, but I have seen it time and time again as missteps. Dress the part appropriately. My current boss, Karen Norton, has a phrase that I think is wonderful, which is be the best dressed, most professionally dressed person in the room, and you cannot go wrong. And it is so true. Be able to talk clearly, communicate clearly, prepare for meetings, do your research. If you're going to go into a scientific meeting and you're going to meet with a scientist or senior management, research what you're talking about so that you can contribute and not just kind of sit there quietly. If you make deliverable dates, meet them. Again, contribute. If you're a technician, your CVs and you're interviewing, they're critical. And not just the CV, and they're the basics. Tailor your resume to the job. Include your other core skills, etc., etc. But I will tell you that most CVs that I see are mediocre at best. And I will also tell you that a good resume, I will pass it around. I will give it to other people. So if there's a special skill, and someone told you once upon a time that your resume should be no longer than 3/4 of a page, so you leave off the fact that maybe you're an expert at cardiovascular ultrasound, guess what? If that's something that I'm looking for, I no longer know that you do it. And so you've completely cost yourself an opportunity. If you have what you think is a core skill, put it on there. The way I tend to look at it is if you can distill a decade worth of experience into 3/4 of a page, you need to have more experiences. You need to find more things to do. And again, find ways to impact the industry. It not just gets you noticed, it helps the industry itself. Again, you would be amazed at how many of what you as a technician think are just, it's part of my normal day. No one else knows that. And we reinvent the wheel all the time. If you read scientific papers, the part that they skip over is all of the tips and tricks that enable them to get a model working. Focusing on surgery, for example, most papers will tell you, we did a heart transplant. We used this suture. Okay, that's not going to help me recreate their model. You as a technician do that kind of thing. That's the information you can share. So again, present, write your summaries on CompMed, share your information at meetings. You're going to elevate the work being done. And you're also going to get noticed as a resource. If you don't, that's information that never gets out there. And it's information that may be lost. So to shift gears a little bit, so if you're a technician, or certainly if you manage technicians, why don't people develop technicians? They leave, which is very true. There have been times in my management career where I felt like a revolving door. You take someone and you teach them high-level surgical skills and technical skills and writing skills and presentation skills, and they go. Technicians who are developed and empowered want to have their own say. They want to have their viewpoint respected. They have opinions. They have informed opinions. They're going to require not just consistency, but you're going to have to give them actual authority to make decisions. And as a manager, that can be terrifying. So they're going to want to function at a higher level. And that can be at times a little frustrating to manage. It certainly means that they're not just going to do what you say when you say it. So there are reasons not to develop technicians. And in my opinion, they're not especially valid. Because if you develop your technicians, it is a tremendous investment, and it will pay off. Developing new capabilities, you don't have to have oversight all the time. They can work independently and do good work. They can problem solve on their own. And yes, some technicians who are empowered and developed will find something that better suits what they want to do. But others, that's what they want to do, and you will keep them. So let me give you an example. We had a group of technicians, and again, just to circle around, the moment I have 6 technicians reporting to me, we have 15 of them in our group. We have some of the best technicians I've ever worked with. We get wonderful raw material, and we train the heck out of them, and we develop them, and they do things that impress me constantly. Want to do heart surgery? Fine. We'll have you up to do heart surgery in 3 or 4 months. It's amazing, but they can do it. So as an example, giving one technician this kind of development and spending that kind of focused time, I spent in formalized training about 120 hours over 3 years working with this technician, focusing on some high-level skills. She went off, she worked independently, she developed higher-level skills, etc., etc. I spent about another 20 hours teaching her how to do cardiovascular ultrasound. We had a big project coming in. We needed people who could do this work, and there was more work than there was people. In the course of 2013, doing echoes that were at least as good as anything I ever did, she did over 300 hours of them. That's 300 hours of echo I didn't have to do. So right there, like giving her those tools and enabling her to do this kind of work, it saved me so much time. Looking at metrics, in the 7 years in working on getting these skills up, our output per technician in my group increased by over 400%. Yes, we lost technicians to other jobs, but even when we lost that, we were still over 300% higher in work output than we were when we started this process, giving them the empowerment, giving them the authority to work independently. So yeah, we lost technicians, and I hate when that happens. I hate losing good people. I'm happy for them, much self-pitying on my part. But still, we were able to do so much work than we had at the beginning. And this isn't just normal work. We went from 0 surgical procedures to over 1,000 surgical procedures a year being done by the technical staff. What a payoff for our company. What a payoff for me. I looked good. I was able to get new capabilities online. We were able to help the company. We were able to move things forward. And it's by taking outstanding people and giving them those tools, and boy, did it pay off for our department, for our company, certainly for me. You're going to have to train them. You're going to have to position them to use the skills that you give them, that you allow them to develop. It does you no good. And it certainly doesn't do them any good to be given skills that they can never utilize. You're going to have to push them at times. Going back to my 2 technicians, did a fantastic job presenting. I'm not sure if they've forgiven me at this point, but they needed to do it, and it helped them, and it helped the field. You support them. You take the time to develop them. You take the time to listen to them. You take the time to mentor them. And that is hands-on time. All right? My opinion with technicians is you cannot effectively mentor from your desk. You need to be there. You need to be working with them. You need to help them problem solve. And then when they start giving you solutions to problems, you take them. When I do surgical training, I'm constantly citing the technicians who I have cheerfully stolen their refinements and their suggestions that are now part of how I do my work. And there's nothing that's both more gratifying but also more frustrating than if you spent 15 years doing something one way and one of your technicians looks at it and says, well, that doesn't make any sense, why don't you do this? And then you spend a lot of time kicking yourself for going through all that extra effort for no payoff, or doing something that isn't nearly as good. But the flip side is by having them empowered to do that, you're now better. And don't be afraid to release them. If a good technician wants to go, help them, find them something. I think you have an obligation to them, in part, but also, if you have a wonderful technician who's going to go off and become a scientist, wonderful. Now you have a wonderful scientist out in the field, and that's so much better for us, especially if it's in your company, because now you have people with wonderful skills that you can keep passing on. So to kind of wrap up at the end, if you're a technician, you are going to be a master of your own fate. You have to be. You have to take the responsibility. You have to go through the time and effort. As a manager, it's your responsibility to clear the path for them. I put this in, so for those of you who aren't aware, this is a Buddhist deity in Japan known as Fudomayo. And if you're a martial artist, you've probably heard of Fudomayo. But what he is there for is to clear the path for others. So there's a sword to cut through obstacles, there's a rope to bind them and put them aside. And if you're managing technicians, this is who you should be. Clear the path for them. Give them the room, give them the tools, and help them keep moving forward. So, that's what I have for you today. So, I hope that it was useful. And so now I'm going to click on the little flashing Q&A button down at the bottom and try and answer any questions that you all might have. And certainly if your questions aren't answered within this, the wonderful people at LabRoots, Dr. Stefan Baran, whomever, please don't hesitate. They know how to get a hold of me. Believe me, they know how to get a hold of me. And feel free to ask questions down the line. But okay, so first question, and this is a good one, and I've gotten this in several different ways along the way. So the question is, how do you deal with animal welfare non-compliance when it is reported to senior management and they don't want to take any action? I'll give you an honest answer, and it might be a little bit lengthy, but I figure I may as well give you an honest answer. And it is simply this. There are avenues within. So certainly if you have an internal IACUC, use them. And I've worked with some outstanding IACUCs in my time, and I've worked with some not so outstanding IACUCs in my time. When you have one who is passionate about what they do, they're worth their weight in gold. We have one where I work at that's very passionate, and they will hold your feet to the fire, and as your feet being held to the fire, maybe it's a little uncomfortable, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. But what if you don't have that? For a technician, there are a few approaches that you can take. You can take what has been described to me as killing with kindness. And what that means is just be there and be helpful and push. That may pay off. If you can speak the language that the person in question finds important. So a scientist, animal welfare might not be the most critical thing on their plate, That's not the metric that they get at their end of the year evaluation. The metric is, were the studies done in a high quality fashion? Were they done efficiently? Was the output sufficient? So can you phrase your concern to target that? Can you, for instance, again, focusing back on surgery, if you go through some of those books and some of those articles, if you talk with people, you know, Dr. Flecknell, Dr. Tranquilli, Dr. Baran, you know, any of the VBIs, Marcel is phenomenal on this as well. They'll give you the information that unrelieved pain causes hormonal changes. It causes GI changes. It causes neuro changes, transient neurologic lesions in the brain from subclinical infections. So you can approach it with this is important because it's going to affect your results. It will affect your science. And in other presentations, I have given my own anecdotal experience on what effects these have and how these can cripple a drug progression. So you can try that. And can you talk their language? What is important to them, and can you focus it in those terms? Can you find other avenues? One that I've seen that I wish I had been the one to do it, but another technician went this route. This is way back, different company, but a scientist who just was not receptive to our concerns about animal welfare. And at the time, our IACUC wasn't willing to come down in a disciplinary fashion. Okay? So we felt stuck. One of my fellow technicians decided that this was not acceptable, and she went to that scientist boss's boss, who definitely cared about it. Now, did she put herself at some risk? Yes, she did. Could that have cost her? Yes, it could have. But it worked. And, you know, there are tools that you have. If you're ALAC accredited, you don't want to lose ALAC accreditation. And if you can find someone high enough in the company who, frankly, doesn't really care what the concern is of that individual, but does not want to risk their accreditation, you can try that as well. But I'll be honest, sometimes the environment that you're in, it's not going to happen. Either the issue is not considered significant enough to address, or, you know, maybe this person, well, they get all the grant money coming in, so we don't want to mess with them, or whatever the case may be. And in all honesty, in those cases, that's where all your networking and your presenting and your getting notice comes into play, because it's time to leave. That's the time where if you can't fix it, and it's something that you value, and to preach just a little bit, I use this in all of my presentations when I do surgery, but with rare exceptions, all the animals that we use, they're going to be euthanized at the end. They're going to be giving their life to give us a data point. And that is a tremendous responsibility on our part. The responsibility in my eyes is make sure that they don't suffer to give you that data point, that they're treated humanely and cared for well, and that you get the best data point that you possibly can out of them, the highest quality, the most useful. And if your organization doesn't fit that, then you need to find another organization. Again, there are other tools, and you can try them, and you should try them. Don't be afraid of being a little bit annoying, because you'll probably find that those groups value it. Someone in there will value the fact that you were willing to speak up, so try and speak up. And certainly if it's something truly egregious, there are regulatory agencies to go to, especially the USDA, and I would hesitate to go that route unless you have no other choice. But by the same token, part of our responsibility is to report these things. Use your IACUC as best you can. That's the honest answer. I wish I could give you a short, quick, do this and you'll always win. I can't. But you can win far more often than you might think, but you'll have to push and you'll have to be creative and find the person who is going to help you. on that. So, other one. Do you have some suggestions of journals to submit potential articles to? I do, actually. First off, regional ALAS is a great one because a lot of your regional ALAS groups have either newsletters or tips and tricks, electronic emails, or what have you. And especially to start with, those are really useful, especially because you don't have to put together a full 10-page article with citations and go through your legal department and all the rest. You can send it out there. It will get you noticed, but it also gets you the experience and the feedback of how your writing was. Other organizations, again, I'm part of the Academy of Surgical Research. Dr. Baran is running the team that is responsible for their electronic Surgical Savvy newsletter. You can write for that. And it doesn't have to be, here's how I did a heart transplant, here's how I cured death by putting this compound in place. It can be something as simple as, what's the best way to clip the fur on a C57 mouse without damaging the skin? It sounds so small that you might overlook it, but guess what? Lots of people have difficulty with that. We have some of our best technicians working on the best way to clear hair for ultrasound right now, and they will be writing it up. And again, it sounds very small until you spend days and weeks trying to reinvent the wheel. So my advice, look towards regional ALAS, Academy of Surgical Research, other organizations that have some sort of electronic newsletter or what have you. And here's the beauty of it. Let's say your regional ALAS doesn't have that. Get on the board. Start working for your regional ALAS, and I will tell you that in most situations, if you're willing to do the work, they'll let you do it. So if you get on that board, or you get on that communications committee, or you get on that program committee, and you say, you know what, I would love to spearhead sending out a newsletter to our members, we'll write this. If you're willing to do the work, they will let you do it. And I should also, Dr. Luis Toledo has written a wonderful book, and I wish I could remember the name off the top of my head, but if you look it up, it is available. I think I got my copy through Amazon. But he's written a wonderful book on how to write technical studies. So how do you write a journal article? And he takes you through the development of the concept to how to work it. He's currently the editor for the Journal of Investigative Surgery, and it's a wonderful book. And in all honesty, I got a few copies. Well, let me rephrase that. Santa Fe Adventist paid for it, so they got several copies for our library. But our technicians have them, so as we're helping them write their articles over the next few years, it's a great resource. And again, it's a perfect example of Luis is a wonderful man. He knows a tremendous amount about this, and he's on CompMed, he's on other listservs, and if you send something out there, he'll help you. He'll answer questions. So there are avenues out there. And quite honestly, use CompMed. Go to the ALAS listserv and say, hi, I would like to present an article about this. Does anyone have any idea? Could be ALN magazine, could be any of the ALAS magazines. People will guide you in the right direction. Okay. And I think that is all the questions that I have right now. So again, just to finish up, if any other questions if you want to contact us, again, please feel free to go through LabRoots or go through Dr. Baran, Veterinary Bioscience Institute. You have my email, you can certainly use that as well. Feel free to kick out any questions you might have, and I will do my best to answer them. And again, I'd like to thank LabRoots for hosting this, and I'd like to thank all of you for listening to me for the past hour, but it seemed like a pretty good topic to talk about during ALAS's Animal Tech Week. So thank you very much, and I wish you the best with the rest of the conference. Thank you.